Hi, welcome to this week's version of the Conservative Christian Ecology podcast, or depending on where you're listening to it, it could be the Old Testament and Ecology podcast. But either way, I hope you'll enjoy the show, and I hope that we have a good time this week. I'd like to get started by talking about a post that I wrote, which deals with one of the topics from a paper which I am presenting in a class on. It's a research seminar on Zechariah. The paper deals with theology of creation in the book, and one of the texts which deals with that theme of creation can be found in Zechariah 8, verse 12. One finds the writer portraying vines, the land, and the heavens in the sense of sky as producing bountifully for the returnees. This verse contains these metaphors which demonstrate that God has completed his judgment upon the people and restored or will restore the intended order. It reads, "For there will be peace for the seed, the vine will yield its fruit, the land will produce, and the heavens will give their due. And I will cause the remnant of this people to inherit all these things." As a restoration of order, these metaphors may be understood as a part of creatio continua, or an idea of creation continuing to be done and upholding of creation. This idea is expressed in agrarian language, drawing upon fertile imagery. Now we'll have to pause for a quick coffee break. And I'm back. As discussed above, the people who remained in the land were likely engaged in syncretistic practices. I apologize for saying that. It's discussed above in my paper, but not in this blog post. So the people who lived in the land of which was formerly the kingdom of Israel, or more specifically the kingdom of Judah, in the year 586, there was a major deportation of the ruling elite, the priests, the ruling class. Some of the prophets were taken, and then upon the return of Cyrus, you have, when Cyrus issues his decree, you have these we'll call them emerging emerging Jews, these Judahites who worship God. They're returning to the land, and they're claiming a position of prominence. However, there are people of the same heritage who still live there, come from the same lineage, but were not deported. And those people, archaeologists have shown, likely were engaged in syncretistic practices. That is to say, they were worshiping the Canaanite gods in a manner which Israel had struggled with all through the monarchy. One of those practices would be the fertility cults of Canaan, which Israel obviously struggled with. These three metaphors all speak polemically against the idea of Canaanite deities having the power to provide for the people. By polemically, I mean that all three metaphors are asserting that God has the power to give fertility, and not these Canaanite deities. In other words, God has real power. God, as worshipped by the Israelites, has real power. These, what the Bible would call idols, worshipped by the Canaanites, are powerless. So Yahweh God, Israelites God, he uses vines, land, and heavens as his agents of blessing. If God can command these, then it follows that he must have power over them, and the power of the one who created them. Haggai 1, 10, and 11, and then its reversal in Haggai 2, 9, is sometimes understood to be the text, or perhaps the idea, if you don't think that the two were in contact, which Zechariah drew these ideas from. Haggai gives a more extensive list of the items which are not fruitful. God specifically called for a drought in Haggai 1:11. Its scope was broad enough to include mountains, grain, new wine, oil, men, cattle, and even humanity's work. But after the completion of the temple, the curse is reversed in chapter 2, 9. Zechariah is at least describing a similar turn of fortunes, if not the same one. The metaphors in this text serve to reiterate that when people follow the will of God, that is, obedience, doing justice, etc., then God will bless them by having the land bring forth produce. God has affirmed the returnees with these creative acts of blessing. So these metaphors are polemical against fertility deities and assert Yahweh, God's power and creative ability. Zechariah 8 makes the point that the people must be obedient to God if they wish to be identified as his remnant or people. In this context, the creation metaphor functions to solidify the promise of blessing to those who are obedient. Moving along, on Earth Day, I did a little write-up. Couldn't avoid posting on Earth Day, right? I read one guy who I know, his Facebook post for the day said that he had all his lights on, he had his truck idling in the driveway, and he was trying to throw away as much trash as possible. So I jokingly asked him if he was the Earth's Antichrist, which he and I laughed about. Personally, I'm doing what I do every day. That is, I did what I do every day. I ran my 2 box fans that morning to cool the house down to 69 degrees so that I don't have to run the AC. In fact, I can still say I haven't used my air conditioner at all this year. Well, that's not entirely true. I haven't used my air conditioner to cool the place down at all this year. I used it for about 10 minutes the other day just because it was insanely humid inside right before a rainstorm. My goal is to make it at least through May 1st without running the air conditioner, for extended amounts of time. If I have to do it 10 minutes a day, I'm not going to worry about it. But I think I'll actually make it through May 1st and maybe even the first week or two of May without using the air conditioner, just by using those box fans. They supposedly use about 2 cents worth of electricity per hour each. I ran them for 2 hours that morning on Earth Day, so that's about 8 cents worth of power to cool the house for the entire day. Then I'll have the blinds open, so I don't need lights on the whole day. I've even learned that I can eliminate phantom power from my entertainment centers because I control it with a X10 remote power strip that will actually turn off everything. It's got a relay in there that disconnects everything from the power grid, so nothing can get any power there. So I'm able to eliminate the phantom load and get rid of having to use light bulbs. So that's my story of what I did on Earth Day. If you want a great green kind of techie update, there's a link on the blog to CNET. They had a pretty cool post about several ideas in technology to help go green. I guess getting back to the book of Zechariah, as a Christian who cares about God's creation, I'm interested in what the Bible says about creation, obviously. In this case, we find a direct assertion in the mouth of the prophet regarding the creative abilities of God. Zechariah 10:1 says, "Ask rain from the Lord at the time of spring rain, the Lord who makes the storm clouds, and he will give them showers of rain, vegetation in the field to each man."